country indicates that the U.S. military is now operating in a state of desperation, trying to land a decisive blow, but instead finding itself entangled in a conflict it cannot control. The strike on the hotel came after the U.S. military committed yet another atrocity, a war crime by any standard, targeting an area dangerously close to a cancer hospital in Ahvaz, causing disruptions to chemotherapy treatments and forcing the evacuation of 121 children. This is not an act of war. This is an act of barbarism, a deliberate assault on the most vulnerable and a desperate attempt to break the will of a nation that has proven time and again that it cannot be broken. As the fires rage across the region, it becomes increasingly clear that the United
Look
States,
at that man got
under
60
the failed
U.S.
leadership
soldiers
of Donald
killed.
Trump, has bitten off
God
far
damn,
more than
Joe.
it can chew, and the chickens are finally coming home to roost. Before we dive deeper into this developing story, I want to ask you to do something. If you believe in honest journalism that cuts through the lies of the Western corporate media, please like and share this video. Drop a comment, even if it's just a dot, or better yet, share your thoughts on how the U.S. empire is crumbling in real time. Your engagement helps us beat the algorithm and ensures that the truth reaches those who need to see it. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. We are one of the few voices left that refuses to bow down to the war machine, and your support is what keeps us going. Now, let's get back to the story. The Iranian military's response to these American provocations has been swift, devastating, and surgical. While the Pentagon is scrambling to downplay the significance of the Dokhem strike, the reality on the ground tells a completely different story. The Iranian military has launched a coordinated multi-front campaign that has left U.S. bases across the Middle East in ruins. Let's talk about Kuwait, for example. The Iranian military targeted the satellite communications center at the Ali Al Salam Air Base, effectively blinding the U.S. Air Force in the region. They also took out an early warning radar for the CRAM air defense system at the same base, leaving American troops exposed to further attacks. But they didn't stop there. The Iranian military also struck the gathering site of U.S. soldiers at the Shuaibah Pier, hitting them with a combination of missiles and drones that turned the area into a graveyard for American ambitions. And if you think that's all, just wait. In Jordan, the Iranian military destroyed a newly established command and control center and a fighter jet maintenance site at the Muwafaq al-Salti Air Base in Al-Asraq. This was the base that the U.S. was using to coordinate its strikes against Iran, and now it's a smoldering wreck. The Iranians didn't just hit the command center. They completely destroyed a fixed radar site, the communication systems, and the fuel depots, effectively neutralizing the base's ability to function as a hub for aggression. This is a humiliation that the Pentagon cannot hide from its own people. But the audacity of the Iranian military doesn't end there. Earlier, the Iranian army announced that it had completely destroyed a U.S. airspace detection and surveillance radar, as well as the pumping station for its fighter jet fuel tanks at Sheikh Issa Air Base in Bahrain. This is a significant blow because it directly impacts the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, which relies on this base for its operations in the Persian Gulf.
Well, Dan, we need to face the reality that this is effectively what General Keane and others like him have argued for. That is, finish the job. Finish the job amounts ultimately into a relapse into barbarism, a descent into the Middle Ages. It means bringing your enemy to his or her knees. That's really what they're saying. In order to do that, in their minds, you're going to have to destroy everything. Most important, not just the petroleum infrastructure, industry, and so forth. You're going to have to destroy the desalination plants. That's how you bring the country, in their minds, to its knees. Now, why is this not likely to work? Well, first of all, I think the Iranians are quite prepared to sustain the damage that he's threatening. They have found ways around it in the past. There are other ways to export petroleum. And they'll do it, and those products. Secondly, while this goes on, and President Trump is sort of soothing his ego and postponing the inevitable admission of defeat, which has to happen for this to end, frankly, he's got to say, look, this hasn't worked, we've got to disengage. He doesn't want to do that. His ego won't permit him to do such a thing. That means the rest of the world looks at this and says, we're screwed. You know, we're headed into a global depression, and that's where we're going. You know, when you look at fertilizer and the 40-50% increase in the cost of it, it's not just the cost, it's the availability. The nitrogen that is vital and essential, the helium that you absolutely need for the production of microcircuitry. All of these things fall into the same categories. This is a catastrophe. And it's being brought on not by Iran, contrary to what we think. It's being brought on by us in our unconditional allegiance to Israel, because it is ultimately Israel that demands the destruction of Iran. We have no particular reason why we should destroy the Iranian state or murder most of its population. That's not what we're about. But that's what it's become. That's what you're describing. And that's why it's a relapse into barbarism. Now, what will the Iranians do? Well, what would you do? I would fight back with everything at my disposal. And I would punish, absolutely annihilate everything and anyone who stands with us. So if you're living in Kuwait or Bahrain or Qatar or the United Arab Emirates, or for that matter, even Saudi Arabia, I would get ready. Because if you think you're going to escape the consequences of Trump's war and Israel's demand for Iran's destruction, you will not. And the elites that are ruling in those countries will be swept out of power. They've already reached out to Jordan, and I'm sure that they have thousands of weapons and missiles remaining that they will ultimately use against Israel. And there's not a great deal we can do. We cannot shut that down. And we've talked about this before. Our technology, as Ted Postel and others have pointed out, has not reached the point where we can reliably protect any of these places. The smart move, the intelligent move, is to recognize the limits of our power, to recognize its utility and say, that's enough, no more. We wish you well, Israel, but we cannot go on with this campaign.